As I cleared out my father's old cabin after his funeral, a loose floorboard popped open under my foot, revealing his diary with a chilling note scrawled on the first page. "If I'm dead, it's because of your brother." The words stopped me cold, the musty air of the Adirondack cabin suddenly heavy with dread. I was Abigail Harper, 61, a retired baker who had spent my life kneading dough and soothing hearts in the small town of Saranac Lake, New York. My father, Samuel Harper, had died just 10 days ago in what the sheriff called a tragic hunting accident, his rifle misfiring while he was alone in the woods. The diary, its leather cover worn soft by his hands, lay in a hidden compartment beneath the floor, as if he'd meant for me to find it. My brother, Thomas, was 42, 18 years my junior, the son my father had late in life with his second wife after my mother's death. Thomas had always been the golden child, charming and ambitious, now running the family's logging business. How could he be a killer? The cabin was perched on a ridge overlooking the Adirondack Mountains, its pine walls steeped in memories of my childhood, summers splitting wood with Samuel, winters by the fire listening to his stories of the land. He'd inherited the logging business from his father, a modest operation that supplied timber to local mills. The land, 200 acres of dense forest, was our family's pride, a legacy Samuel swore to protect. I'd grown up here, learning to bake at his side, my hands sticky with dough while he carved wooden toys. After my mother died when I was 12, Samuel was my rock, raising me alone until he remarried in his 50s. Thomas came along, a surprise, and I loved him fiercely, even when his charm outshone my quiet steadiness. But Thomas had changed in recent years, his visits to the cabin rare, his focus on modernizing the business with new equipment and corporate deals. I sat on the cabin's worn couch, the diary trembling in my hands. The funeral was yesterday, a somber affair in Saranac Lake's church, where townsfolk whispered about Samuel's love for the land and his stubborn refusal to sell to fracking companies circling the region. Thomas had been there, his suit crisp, his eyes dry as he shook hands and promised to keep the business alive. I'd felt a pang of unease at his polished demeanor, but grief had clouded my judgment. Now the diary's note cut through that fog. "If I'm dead, it's because of your brother." I opened the diary, its pages filled with Samuel's neat script, notes on timber yields, weather patterns, and personal reflections. The early entries were warm. "Abigail's bread today was better than mine ever was. Proud of her." But the later ones darkened. January 15th. "Thomas is pushing to sell the land. Fracking company offered $3 million. I said no, this forest is our soul. He got angry. Said I'm stuck in the past." March 2nd. Found loan papers in Thomas's office. He's borrowing against the land without telling me. Confronted him. He lied, said it's for new trucks. April 10th. My rifle's not right. Took it to Jim's shop. Says the firing pin's tampered with. Thomas was in the shed last week. If something happens, Abigail, find Jim. He knows. Jim was Jim Delaney, Samuel's old friend and the town's gunsmith. The note on the first page, dated the day before his death, was a plea. "If I'm dead, it's because of your brother. Check the loans, protect the land." I clutched the diary, my heart racing. Thomas had taken over the logging business 2 years ago when Samuel's arthritis worsened. He'd promised to modernize, bring in bigger clients, but Samuel had complained about his secrecy. I'd brushed it off as father-son tension, but now I saw it differently. The land was valuable, not just for timber, but for the natural gas beneath it, coveted by fracking companies. He'd fought them off for years, calling their offers blood money. Had Thomas betrayed him for a payout? The next morning, I drove to the logging office, a squat building by the mill where Thomas worked. He greeted me with a hug, his cologne sharp. "Abby, you didn't have to come. I'm handling everything." "I want to see the books," I said, my voice firm. "For Dad." His smile tightened. "They're messed up right now. Let me clean them up first." I insisted, and he relented, handing over a laptop with financial records. The numbers were staggering. loans totaling $500,000 against the land, signed by Thomas without Samuel's approval. Withdrawals labeled equipment but traced to a personal account in Thomas's name. I copied the files to a USB drive when he stepped out to take a call. My hands shook as I remembered Samuel's diary. Check the loans. That afternoon, I visited Jim Delaney at his gunsmith shop, a cluttered space smelling of oil and metal. Jim, 70, with a grizzled beard, looked weary. "Abigail, I'm sorry about Samuel. He was worried about that rifle." "What did he say?" I asked, showing him the diary. Jim sighed. "He brought it in a week before he died. The firing pin was filed down. Wouldn't fire right, could backfire. I fixed it, but he said Thomas had been in the shed messing with his gear. He suspected foul play." "Why didn't you tell the sheriff?" "Samuel asked me to wait. Said he'd handle Thomas himself. Then, the accident." I drove back to the cabin, my mind spinning. The sheriff's report said Samuel's rifle misfired, the bullet ricocheting into his chest. But if Thomas tampered with it, it was no accident. I searched the cabin again, finding a small recorder hidden in a coffee can, a habit Samuel had from his days tracking poachers. I played it, and Thomas's voice crackled through. "Dad, you're too old for this. Sell the land or I'll make sure it's mine." Samuel's reply, "You'd kill your own father for money?" Thomas laughed, cold. "Accidents happen." I felt sick. Thomas, my little brother, who I'd taught to tie his shoes, had planned this. But I needed more proof to go to the sheriff. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the old mill, midnight. I have evidence on Thomas. Bring the diary. R." The mill was a crumbling relic by the river, where Samuel used to store logs. I hesitated, but tucked the diary, recorder, and a pocket knife into my bag. The night was cold, the stars sharp above the pines. At the mill, a figure waited. Rachel, Samuel's former accountant, 65 with tired eyes. "She'd hidden the diary," she said. "Samuel asked me to, in case something happened. Thomas is deep in with a fracking company. They paid him to sabotage the rifle." She handed me a folder, emails between Thomas and a fracking executive promising $1 million for the land's mineral rights, plus photos of Thomas buying a file kit at a hardware store. "I was scared," she said. "The company's dangerous. They threatened my kids if I talked." "Why now?" I asked. "Samuel was my friend. I couldn't let Thomas win." I took the evidence to Sheriff Linda Hayes, a no-nonsense woman I'd known since high school. She reviewed the diary, recordings, and emails, her face grim. "We'll need to test the rifle again, but this is enough for a warrant. Stay low, Abigail. Thomas has powerful friends." The next day, Thomas invited me to dinner at his house in town, his voice warm. "Let's talk about the future, Abby. The business, the land. I death'd want that." I agreed, sensing a trap, and hid the recorder in my purse. I also called Linda, asking her to monitor the meeting. Thomas's house was modern, all glass and steel, a stark contrast to the cabin's warmth. He poured wine, his smile too easy. "Abby, the land's worth millions. We could split it, live easy. Dad would have wanted that." I set my glass down. "I found his diary, Thomas. You tampered with his rifle." His face hardened. "You're grieving, imagining things. That diary's nonsense. I have recordings, emails. You sold him out for fracking money." He lunged, knocking over the wine. "You should have stayed out of it." I dodged, grabbing my knife, but Linda's deputies burst in, guns drawn. Thomas was arrested, his confession caught on my recorder. The trial shook Saranac Lake. Evidence piled up. The tampered rifle, bank records, and Rachel's testimony. Thomas admitted to filing the firing pin, pressured by a crime syndicate tied to the fracking company who'd threatened to expose his gambling debts. He got 20 years. The syndicate's local leader was arrested too after Rachel's evidence exposed their threats. I kept the land, turning it into a conservation trust to protect the forest Samuel loved. But the real healing came in the cabin, where I found a letter tucked in the diary's back cover. "Abigail, you're the heart of this land. Keep it wild." I cried, feeling his pride, his love. At 62, I opened a bakery on the edge of the forest, naming it Samuel's Hearth, where I taught kids to bake and told stories of the man who raised me. Thomas's betrayal broke my heart, but Samuel's legacy mended it, his voice alive in every loaf, every tree.